Sup everybody, this is Karak with ACG, and as always, it's my continuing mission to bring you reviews that aren't 2 minutes long or filled with sponsored bullcrap. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Oh look, another stealth assassin game. You can almost smell that strapping, supernaturally handsome protagonist with the homicidal tendencies, outfitted with a smile that gets him out of jams and gets everyone else out of their clothing. And apparently that's pretty much what the developer Cyanide thought, so they invented a 4-foot-tall, pissed-off, shank-happy goblin version of Sam Fisher and built a game all for him. Now that was Master of Shadows, but now comes the sequel, Shards of Darkness. Set about 20 years after Styx slowly whisper-narrated folks' deaths in the original, Shards of Darkness is a stealth assassin game coming out on March 14th for the PS4, Xbox, and PC, and for the suggested budget price of $35.99. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you like the video, maybe subscribe. So here's my review for Styx Shards of Darkness, rolling straight up Goblin style, Tom Clancy Splinter Sticks, and the Terminator 2 version of Goblin Assassins. Graphics are up first. So really, while the original Styx title wasn't necessarily poor looking, and in fact had some excellent design and art stylings, Styx Shards of Darkness really leaps into the Unreal Engine and comes away with a tacit understanding that we should see a more detailed and overall better looking game. And I have to say, in most ways, Shards of Darkness is just that. First, you know it in the stretching vertical level designs that the original was actually known for, but continued here with an even larger array of locations all decked out with fantastic fantasy-based architectures, like the stilt-based human seaside city that looks like it's about ready to friggin' fall apart at every turn, to caves below a creepy-ass something's rumbling egg layer. Shards absolutely never hesitates to throw something new your way. What's also instantly noticeable is the lighting engine, with not only the interplay of light and dark creating dynamic shadowing, but a heavy use of color and theme, which means diving down deep into the warped confines of Dark Elf fortresses carries this weird malevolence to it that nowhere else seems to do, leading a very real difference to each location you explore. There's also this subtle improvement in animations that we see. While it's not perfect the first time you see the lumbering walk of Styx or perform one of his slightly psychopathic assassination animations that always seem to take just a bit longer than they need to, it actually feels really unique as a title. Also, one of the things I notice is that the texture work is for the most part fantastic, but there are a couple low detail textures here and there at the edges of some of the maps. And to be honest, some places in the game look like someone was warned guests were coming, so they hoovered the level out of anything extra, lending this strange antiseptic chic look to some of the locations. Now, when running on a 5820K at 4.2 and a 1080, with every setting on Ultra, I was actually able to get a steady 60 FPS at 1440p. Interestingly enough, I was also able to play at 4K at 60 FPS with every setting but post-processing at Epic. Now, processing at low or average seemed to lock it at 60 FPS, with average being the first to introduce anything resembling ambient occlusion, so it's well worth choosing that as a base. Now, with the number of effects, spell work, and unique momentary fantasy moments that Styx likes to throw at you, I admit that this ran far better than I actually expected. Unfortunately, during cutscenes there is some loading stutter and drops in FPS even on an SSD, but being able to play with these settings was actually well worth those little concessions. Also, Cyanide has a performance patch planned to fix a couple issues, including lower than expected FPS during co-op gameplay, so performance may actually increase after launch as well, but I'm pretty happy with the PC. Now sadly, the consoles do not fare so well. The Xbox One's at 900p and aims for 30 FPS, the PS4 is at 1080p and aims for 30 FPS, and the PS4, strangely enough, sees no official support whatsoever, but luckily we do have the recent boost mode patch, which may keep some of these frame rates higher. You know, as a package, I gotta say I'm actually impressed with Styx. It doesn't escape unscathed, and it does have a couple issues, but those are wedded to a series of overall improvements that really make the entire game look a great deal better than its predecessor, and the level design and artwork was great then and is even better now. Sound, music, and voice.
Is our High Priestess Lisserel already in place at the ceremony of the glorious blood?
Not yet. But the chosen and those invited to attend have already taken their place and are in contemplation.
Are
I'd rather be buried in shit up to my nipples than spend one more second in this shithole town.
And And of course, as always, sound is up first, and here we have, like we did with the original, an excellent use of environmental spatial effects with ringing echoes in large cavern killing fields to really tight sonically accurate spots when Styx steps into the smaller homes of his enemies to deliver someone's last birthday card in knife form. Now, the environmental sound samples themselves are actually good, with wind whipping past your face as you sneak across airship decks and miring you down in murky, wet feelings when you investigate ancient but not actually abandoned mines. Also, the soundstage and positional audio in this game is just really well done, informing the gamer of enemies on the other side of doors or above or below them on catwalks if, of course, you're observant enough. Very good sound. Music. So this was a bit surprising. Now, first, the game uses a combination of expected orchestral instruments, woodwinds, and so forth for specific locations, menu screens, and some ambient moments. But as you're playing, I was actually quite surprised by other ambient bits that came up that almost had a steampunk electro theme to it that played out from time to time. Now, while the original reveled in a surprisingly dark and really somber mood, Shards elicits a reminder, to me at least, of the Sherlock Holmes movies and their soundtracks with a flair for darker themes that are tempered by almost playful moments that come up to sort of surprise you. And while I think I like the original score a little bit better as a true piece of work, Shards changes it up a bit and works almost as well while still using music to inform the gamer that a lot has happened since that original title. Also, goblins and oboes. Who knew that could work so well? Voice. So dear God, this is split right down the middle. First, I have to say Styx rocks. He just does. And yes, the writing pushes it a bit with really frequent fourth wall breaks and sometimes the occasional one-liner where you wonder if everybody on the team just learned what the word fuck meant. The fact is, though, Styx has an incredible amount of character from the moment you hear him switching up an old classic song with his own lyrics to the sometimes laugh-out-loud death cutscenes where he spares no gamer his ire at dying. The voice acting there is great. Sadly, aside from a couple side characters that are passable, most of the rest are atrocious. I mean, who wakes up and says, you know what, let's make a game where all the humans sound like robots? Now, while there's a lot of side discussion to learn and no shortage of random comments and world building with backing vocals, half of it sounds like everyone took a friggin' bath in Oxycontin-laced water before showing up to work, which means, yeah, split right down the middle. Styx is great, and he is somebody that you'll care about, but the others are bad enough that at times it feels like you're exploring a game world where everyone's been replaced by a friggin' magical speak-and spell. Gameplay. So as always, let's start off with a little bit about the story. Taking place 20 years after the original Styx game, Shards of Darkness follows the Goblin Thief once again as he gets in completely and utterly over his head. If Shards of Darkness is anything, it's worldly, trading in the interesting but much smaller story and location quota from the original, with one here that quickly peels back the plot and game world as you traverse the locations and basically go from bad to worse to, well, not sure why I even turned this on. But one thing that always impresses me with Styx is the sense of character here, and it's not just different, it's good. Where in Assassin's Creed games you play a handsome, quipping, homicidal maniac getting away with murder because of your plus 10 on the hotness scale smile. In Styx, you're basically a male version of that old lady in Goonies, but here, even the typical fantasy racial roles are a bit turned on their side, and while Styx is not what you'd call a humanitarian, it's always interesting to see the other races set out as more antagonistic and just downright evil than his own. For example, sneaking away from a dwarf goblin hunter and listening to him sniff for your scent is actually downright scary as hell, especially after you just watched him turn another goblin's head into wall graffiti. Or spying on the inner workings of dark elf blood rituals and realizing that, yeah, goblins may have got a bad rap. And what I love about all this is how it rolls out in front of you as you play and experience it. The game has you traverse in a series of levels as the story plays out, with occasional returns to your base to trade out equipment you might find, further the story, and prep for the next hot air balloon goblin SWAT insertion mission that you're going to go on. And throughout the entire thing, there's a great concentrated effort to merge story with gameplay. Because really throughout the title, experimentation is the key here, and there's even less, oh, I better use this piece of equipment in this area because it looks different than others, and more of a, let me try this. Now, throughout the game, Styx design really continues to harken back to excellent trappings of titles like the original Thief and its sequel, with a main character that is not at all together the badassery mobile command unit that most assassins are in games today, and replaces them with a character that, even with a fully upgraded parry skill, isn't really a match for anything other than a solitary guard caught unaware while pissing off a ledge somewhere. Now what this does is it adds a tension that feeds into the normal stealth gameplay, and it really does force you to look around the levels again and again for various points of entry and egress, and that might find you going one way and then completely rethinking the plan halfway through and switching to a different one, only to find a third entry point and a new plan to create as you're going back. Now, of course, as Styx, you do have a number of goblin gadgetries and stealthy skills to get you through levels or bad encounters. First up are some basic gadgets like small glass bottles you can make that you can throw to create diversions, sand you can collect to turn off torches from a distance, and acid to melt bodies, and a couple others. Now, when it comes to the skills, the game sees the return of a very large skill bank separated by stealth, perception, cloning yourself, and the various ways you can augment that, alchemy crafting, and lastly battle. As you progress, you get a large number of points to spend in the skill system, and I have to say, while I like the skills and their progression, and certainly love when you unlock an entire tree you have a choice of 2 basically ultimate skills, the points progression is seriously odd, with you collecting hundreds of points and each skill costing hundreds of points, when a typical allotment of 2 to 3 skill points would have made much more sense and would have been easier to calculate the math when you're deciding if you want to forget a skill to use its points for another, which can occur anytime you're in your hideout or between levels. Now, that being said, I absolutely love how unique some of the skills feel, because you still have that ability to make a clone of yourself by vomiting out an RC car made of flesh and nastiness and roll that sucker around a level, causing every $2 a day night watchman to hightail after the hallucination while you sneak in behind them while their backs are turned. And I really have to say I liked the quests and their goals. There's a secondary goal system as well that works, and you can find secondary goals throughout levels. For instance, open up a chamber to get a special dagger that requires puzzle work, or a large well-protected vault that actually needed various elements to be collected with honest to goodness skills usage to find, and weren't just plotted down on a map with a giant icon titled, "Yo, the secret's here, dummy." Now, speaking of that, as you guys know, I test the difficulty from highest to lowest to see how it fits in. Now, when it comes to the difficulty, the AI is actually tied to it with various changes, and you have 4 difficulties: Discovery, Initiated, Goblin, and Master, or as I like to call them, okay, sounds good, damn son, and nope. Where Discovery is a basic setup for folks new to the game with the ability to save on the fly, parry, and block, Initiated difficulty removes the Paxil from the guards' drinking water, which means they are far more alert, and damages are also set a bit higher. Now, Goblin difficulty turns off the ability to parry or perform combat at all, with ranged attacks doing insane damage and any up-close attacks just killing you outright. Lastly, Master does all this but turns off all saving except the game's own starting level autosaves and those that occur when you return to base. Can't say the AI is amazing, it's improved a little bit over the original, and I think offers a fairly good curve of difficulty. Also, the game allows for co-op, which is just basically another player jumping into your game as a clone of yours with some subtle changes to the gameplay. Now, one last thing, and this concerns control. Almost no one played the original Styx without noticing that jumping, ledge grabbing, and otherwise was sort of a 50-50 chance. While control has not been substantially rewired, it has been improved here and there. But as you come to grips with the way the game handles aimed jumping, you will have the inevitable goblin air delivery as you plunge to your death in what can only be described as a test to see if goblins can bore to the center of the fucking earth. Make no mistake, it is tighter than the original game, but there are still circumstances that will have you watching Styx fall to his death and you're thinking, what the hell just happened? Lastly, the game is easily 20 hours to work through the story alone if you're not worried about being stealthy all the time, and double that if you're a fan of leaving entire levels look like the friggin' plague broke out. And all this brings us to fun factor. Styx revels in its defining moments of exploration and experimentation, moments where the use of gameplay mechanics bring the vulnerability of the main character to the fore, and the underlying world building makes you believe it, resulting in one of the most tense and honestly downright exploratory titles of this kind, even though it's not perfect. And by not perfect, I mean sometimes goddamn infuriating. When Shards of Darkness lets players loose into the levels, it's at its absolute best. However, when the game starts dropping arbitrary out-of-context requirements on you, it can be a sobering moment in game design. For example, some levels say you can't be seen, like at all, but you can kill. So basically, for reasons unknown, every chef, pet groomer, pit fighter, ball washer, and masseuse in an entire kingdom just got jacked into a medieval matrix that reacts to goblins on sight with an instant loss of the game level, but lets you just kill members willy-nilly. And yeah, as I mentioned in gameplay, the control. I can't lie, the times where I fell to my death despite every indication Styx would make the leap, especially on higher difficulties, made me want to punch somebody in the face. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch again rating scale. Well, the game doesn't escape without a couple cuts and bruises, sort of like the main character. Its gameplay is amazing, and the title is well worth buying at this budget price. The price is just perfect. It offers insane amounts of fun gameplay and a ton of replayability, minus the occasional jumping death. In fact, it's rare many times to see a sequel really trump the original in almost all ways, but here, at least in my opinion, it does. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Maybe check out Twitter or Patreon. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. Peace out and enjoy the rest of your week.